Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is go ahead, jump to conclusions. And that is something that I would not normally recommend any of us do. I don't think anybody would recommend that we jump to conclusions, but that was the title of my essay this week, and it was sort of this, topic on my mind because of so many of these news stories that are that are out there right now that kind of boggle the mind and don't require a lot of deep thinking or consideration. That there are certain things that you hear about or that you understand quickly because they don't require, like, for example, that idea when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time, that Maya Angelou quote, right? Some things you really don't need a lot of time to figure out. And there are, by my way of thinking, so many stories like that right now. And so I was just doing a little bit of like a play on that phrase. And I was talking about also that idea. I think there are some people who throw caution to the wind or, tend to just dive right in. And I have never been that person. I've always been someone who really takes my time generally. And I think some of that has been nurture and some of it's been nature. And there's a little bit of like my first birthday, my mom baked a heart-shaped cake for me. My birthday is February 15th, and she was hoping I was going to be a Valentine's Day baby. So she always baked me a heart-shaped cake. And I think everyone there, my family was there, parents, friends, thought I was going to like put my hands in the cake, but I didn't. I just was holding my hands up, kind of staring at this cake. And my mother's best friend, who I ended up calling Aunt, as we do, my Aunt Cheryl, came up behind me and put my hands in the cake because she just could not. she was trying to help me be like a normal kid, which I did not like at all. I just have always, I just have always been someone who's kind of waited and really thought of taking my time. But there are things like, for example, one of the main stories that's out there, like the Graham Plattner thing, is all over the place. And I'm someone who was done a long time ago. I know that there have been people that were just every new kind of scandal that came out, the tattoo, the first allegation from the first woman, just kept kind of like twisting themselves in knots, progressive people, to keep going with this guy. I did not, I was not one of those people. I absolutely, and I don't make any secret of this, I am very liberal. I am progressive. I really feel everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, and far too many people are not being cared for in this country and in the world. And, we need a real deep rethink of what we're doing. I mean, you don't have to look far to see the violence and the chaos and the pain. And I think that in some ways, I I look at the situation and I just I don't know what we're doing. I do not understand what we're doing, So in a very broad sense, I look at how things are and I think we arrive on this planet, on this spinning planet, and it is so, to me, like we have a tiny amount of time. If we're lucky, we have 80 to 100 years, right? If we're lucky, and we're visitors. We're visitors here on a planet that if we were taking care of it and if we were sane, we have everything we need if we were sharing resources. I would be done with all of like the countries and the board. I would be done with it. We would be the people of Earth and we would just figure out how to share resources and just, we need a reset. That's where I'm at. We need a reset. This is not working. And, so I know those are like both radical and naive ideas, but when I look at what we're doing, they make a lot more sense than what we're doing. So, that's where I'm coming from. Showing up on this planet and figuring out how to kill other people or, how to be violent to take what you want. That is a lot less sane than what I just said. That's where I'm coming from. This Graham Plattner thing, for me, I'm a woman. I am a survivor of assault. I was assaulted when I was 16 years old. I have had so many things happen, even prior to that, as a girl growing up in this world. I'm not going to go through all the examples right now, but it's not hard for me to recognize when a man is an unsafe man. This is not difficult for me at all. Okay. That's one thing I'm really confident about, is being able to identify when a man is safe and when a man is not safe. And the least safe men are the men who think they're good and are not. Those are the least safe men. People who defend a man who has multiple allegations of violence against women, and this is not it. So that's one of those things where, okay, someone has a Nazi tattoo, like that could be a deal breaker right there. For me, we're done. We could just be done right then. The Reddit thinks he was misogynistic quotes about, women who've been assaulted and how they bear some responsibility. We're done. This man was not vetted properly, and even the man who was supposed to be doing the vetting has his own issues with allegations. This just wasn't done properly. So, but what is really distressing and disappointing is when you have a bunch of people who call themselves progressives and then are defending this person no matter what, and continuing to defend this man. And saying things like, well, great, way to go, because the other side doesn't care. It doesn't matter what their candidates do. They stick with them. And so great. Now we're going to end up with Susan Collins. I hope you're happy. You know what? First of all, he wasn't going to win. Let's just be really clear on that. Even the most recent polling, before this last woman came forward, he wasn't winning. Just so you're clear on that it wasn't going to happen. And secondly, the whole progressive platform is about all people deserve dignity. And when you identify as a progressive person, but then you're like, well, conservatives don't care what their candidates do. And if this is what we have to deal with in order to win, then this is what we have to deal with. What you just said is that it doesn't matter to you if the candidate is a rapist or someone who, it doesn't matter if this is what we have to do, if this is what we have to tolerate in order to win. So you just put all girls and women outside the circle of people that get cared about. They're no longer part of the circle of care. They're already instantly, you're ready to do that in order to win. So you've already, before we've even begun, you've already betrayed the main principle of the platform that you say you're part of. Now, I understand. I mean, I write about this every week. I understand where we're at. I understand exactly where we're at and how important it is to, if we don't want to continue down this path of violence, and we have all kinds of the most radical, if you want to talk about radical ideas, we've got Pete Hegseth's pastor, Doug Wilson, right, out there talking about, I think it's Wilson, talking about household voting and women don't need the vote. And like those ideas are being floated at Turning Point USA. You get Erica Kirk out there, and you've got conservative women in the mainstream starting to talk about how I'm happy to let my husband do the voting for me because I trust him and he's got my best interest at heart. These people are not okay. This is not okay. And they're starting to talk about going after birth control now. We're not in this is not a normal, set of circumstances. So I understand where we're at very, very well. I have a teenage daughter in this mess. I am a woman. I have all of my friends just about, so many are vulnerable. They're members of vulnerable communities across this country, and their rights are at stake. So believe me, including me, right? And my daughter, I very much am aware of how much we need to flip the Senate and all of that. And I'm still saying this is not the guy. Okay, this is not the guy, and he wasn't going to win. So that was one thing, and we could have and should have recognized this quite a while ago and shifted gears, right, and made a different choice. Whatever, people of Maine are the people who could have figured this out then. And they're going to figure it out now. I have a lot of faith in the people of Maine, and I think that they're going to be able to pick a different candidate, and it's going to be okay. Susan Collins' team. So I'm sure anyone who's listening to this already knows that Graham Plattner did finally suspend his campaign. And I was writing about that as well. The way that he did it, if you watch the video, which I linked in the essay, that is what an angry narcissist looks like. It's this, victimized, poor me, the powers that be are after me. It's this grandiose, they won't let me have it. We built this thing and we won on June 9th, but they're not the establishment won't let us have this if it's me. So I'm going to make this great sacrifice and suspend my campaign. These allegations are not true. I mean, he quadrupled down on that. Let's see if he sues anyone for defamation. I'm going to be really curious to see if that happens. But that video was reminiscent of Eric Swalwell when he was still denying. And he is in a world of pain, that man. There are tells. You can see if you know what you're looking for. It's not hard to spot these men who refuse to be accountable. There was nothing in his video about, I have the utmost concern for survivors of assault. I have the utmost respect for women. There was nothing, I am so sorry for all the people who have been like working tirelessly. I let you down, like nothing. It was just this victim, poor me. Like, this isn't true. I'm being attacked. I'm being denied. And, so anyway, that there was a situation where the evidence was there a very long time ago, and we could have jumped to this conclusion 4 months ago. I don't need 4 women to come forward. I don't need, we had plenty of evidence long before. And I was saying, like, nothing good happens for women when they come forward. It's no fun. You just get attacked again. You get attacked again, and it's happened to every single one of them who's come forward. And you get attacked again in the court of public opinion. People go after everything: your looks, your sexual history, your social media, what you were wearing, all of it. It is so painful. There's no reward for coming forward. And usually, even in situations where people come, like I was writing about it not that long ago, the 2 teenage girls in the UK who came forward. Those teenage boys, do you remember the 3 teenage boys? Like, that judge, I mean, it's been in the UK, there's a process where the public, if there's a public outcry, then they have a process by which those, the judgments can be overturned. If the judge, for example, no one, it isn't necessary for anyone to go to jail today, to go to prison today. You boys have been so well behaved, and he was talking about ADHD and like anxiety and low IQ, and this was their first offense. It wasn't, but point being, it's like when women come forward or girls come forward, it is a thankless proposition. And I was talking about E. Jean Carroll, and how even when you win the case, you still don't win. Like, she hasn't gotten her money. And when you talk about that, like with the president's supporters, when you talk about E. Jean Carroll, right? She's supposed to get $83 million. She's also supposed to get $5 million. And he's trying to like appeal that. He's attacked her. All these things have happened. And when you talk about it, it's like what his supporters will say is, that's just it's a witch hunt. That's not real. She's a liar. A jury found him guilty. And I'm going to, talk about, I'll put it in the description. I'm going to talk about some pretty intense things here. So this is not for little ears. So this would be a time to like hit pause if you have children in the background or whatever, because I'm going to talk about some things, okay? Or if you yourself are not like a resource for this right now, I'm going to talk about sexual assault. So you could hit pause if you need to do that. He was found guilty by a jury of raping E. Jean Carroll in a dressing room at Bergdorf Goodman in 1996, the federal definition of rape. The federal definition of rape, he absolutely he met that. Because the jury said she proved beyond any reasonable doubt that he penetrated her with his fingers. She has said the whole time from the beginning to her friends, to her like everybody, there's plenty of corroboration of this at the time and after, that she told people what happened. And it was both with his fingers and his penis. But the jury said that because it's been so long, they could not, the only thing that they could know for sure was that it was his fingers. And in New York State, and this is how it works, right? Different states have different definitions. In New York State, if you can't prove that it was also then it's not rape. Okay. In New York State, if it's the fingers, then it's sexual abuse. And that's why you always hear adjudicated rapist, right? Sexual abuse, sexual assault. Federally, it would be defined as rape, because anything that penetrates the, not just the vagina, but, anus, anything is going to be rape. It's going to be defined that way. But in the state of New York, you need to be able to prove not just fingers. Okay. So you say that to his supporters, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, they'll say, well, it's just a civil case. It's very, of course it's distressing. Of course it's distressing. And then they'll say, like, what he said, which is, she's not my type, which is the most misogynistic, non-defense. And it's just so nasty. And, it's just incredibly nasty is what it is. So, I was talking about, this idea, like, that right now, as this whole Graham Plattner thing was going down, you have all of these, like, Republican talking heads, with this, like, trying to have some kind of moral high ground to it. It's like, okay, you don't get to do that. Just be quiet. Like, we're people that are, like, liberal minded, we're handling our business. We're getting rid of these candidates. We're getting rid of Eric Swalwell. We're getting rid of Graham Plattner. It's taking way too long, but we're doing it. We're not voting for these people. We're not pushing them forward. We're getting rid of them. You elected this man. So just be quiet. Like, just don't try to, don't try to have any moral high ground, because when you vote for a man who says he grabs women by the pussy, like, you did that, if you did it, then you bought a ticket, for the ship that is tight. Like, the name of the boat you got on is, like, goodbye ethics and goodbye, like, caring about women and girls and men who assault women and girls. You got on a boat, with a man who says he grabs women by the pussy. Like, that's what you did. You voted for that guy. You said, that's okay with me. He said that. I heard the words, coming out of his mouth. I heard him say that, and I'm voting for him anyway. That's not a deal breaker for me. So if you did that, and now this man has been convicted by a jury, you can keep doing this thing of, like, oh, it's a witch hunt, it's politically motivated. But really, I mean, at a certain point, there are so many women. With him, there are, I've lost count. It's like 18, 27, so many women, and including his first wife, by the way, who, then took it back because I'm sure she was threatened. But, it's like, this is not, I think it's really one of those things where you don't want to be so disingenuous, even with your own self. You want to be able to look yourself in the eye, in the mirror at the end of the day when you're brushing your teeth. This is not a man who respects women. This is a man who says, quiet piggy, and, you should smile more to, journalists, female journalists who are asking him about Epstein, Caitlin Collins, like, this is not a man who respects women. He has cheated on every wife. He has, just, like, I just don't want to, we don't even need to, like, litigate this. This is not a man who respects women. So just to stop, like, don't, Graham Plattner is not the guy to push forward. And if you have voted for this president, Pete Hegseth, if you were, like, in favor of him, you're still in favor of him, just be quiet, because you don't have any ground to stand on. Just, like, be a grown-up about it. And, you put these people in office. you don't now get to like say anything about other men. Just, anyway, these are some of the things that I was writing about. And as I was talking about, I'm going through the essay because I don't want to forget all the different stories. Oh, so then Mitch McConnell, right? Because I was talking about the this whole sort of situation that has happened. He went into the hospital on June 14th, and his office was not releasing any information about why, what was going on, what had happened. And his last vote on the Senate floor was June 11th. People were trying to understand like where he was and what was going on. And finally, on July 1st, an independent journalist named Desiree Townsend, she released an EMS call from his address where someone said, that they needed advanced life support. Somebody at his home address they were already performing CPR. Someone had gone under cardiac arrest, and to please come with advanced life support is when someone's having like a serious, they're unconscious. This is an 84-year-old man who isn't in good health. And there's this recording. And then, the ambulance pulls up and he's rushed to the hospital, but no sirens, just off he goes. And then he's in the hospital for like weeks, and there's nothing released about what is happening or, how he is. And then this Desiree Townsend releases the EMS recording, and Laura Loomer, who, I would not trust anything that she says ever, tweets not long after that she has heard from very high levels at the White House that Mitch McConnell is brain dead, that he's hooked up to machines, that he's gone, basically. And Desiree Townsend, who is at the hospital where Mitch McConnell was, where he still was, says she is hearing these same unverified claims from people in the hospital. Within hours, Republican leadership, who's been totally mum, right, on where he is, what's happening, how he is. Suddenly, you have all these people saying, I spoke to him for 20 minutes today. It was 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Everybody's having 20-minute conversations with Mitch McConnell from from his hospital bed. And you just, really? And so specific, 20-minute conversations. That really seemed quite odd, right? Okay, so we hear nothing. He goes into the hospital. No one can get any information, not the governor of the state. Nobody can get anything, nothing, no information coming from his office, just nothing, just totally quiet about it. And then you get two people who release the EMS recording, and then Laura Loomer, and then boom, within hours you're suddenly getting all of these tweets from other Republican leaders, and Scott Jennings, who I just can't even bear to listen to him, talking about how they've spoken to Mitch McConnell for 20 minutes, which is very specific and odd. It's odd. I don't know the last time you spoke to someone, but you don't normally say how long you talk to someone. That's just very strange. Oh, I spoke to my friend, Wendy for 20 minutes. It's weird. I caught up with my friend, whatever. We spoke for 11 minutes. It's just odd. So I was talking about how strange it is to continue to have these people just not be forthright, just not be transparent. And there's what ends up happening is like you can't help but jump to the conclusion that you're being lied to, right? You're not being leveled with. And it makes it very hard to take anything seriously. That's the problem. When everything is just smoke and mirrors and constant gaslighting, then that is when you fall into this situation where it's like, you can't trust anything. You can't believe anything coming out of this administration, because so much of the time what you're being told ends up not being true. And, of course, now in just last night, Lindsey Graham suddenly died, which was very shocking. It was no one saw that coming. And he, as far as anyone knows, was not sick. I mean, they're saying that he died of a brief and sudden illness, which is odd because, again, that EMS call was released right away, and it was somebody called in the middle of the night and he was having cardiac arrest. So, I mean, I don't know why you would describe cardiac arrest as a brief and sudden illness. It's a strange way to describe a heart attack, but, and I think in his situation, he will be replaced right away. Like, that's part of what's happening here too, is that in South Carolina, the way it's going to work is he will be replaced. And in Mitch McConnell's situation, they changed the law. And so there'll be a special election. So if Mitch McConnell cannot do the job, I mean, he's retiring. He already announced that he's going to retire at the end of his term. But normally, it's different states do it in different ways. But in his, in that instance, there would be a special election. But that will only happen if he announces that he can't do the job by August 3rd. And if he doesn't announce it, then his seat will remain open between now and the election. So, the general election. So there's a little bit of, that's why it was feeling very strange to not be hearing anything, to not have any proof of life, to not have any information coming out of his office for the people of Kentucky. They deserve representation and they deserve to know what is happening with their senators. And this whole idea of people deserve to have medical privacy, then don't hold public office, and it's so hypocritical, because if it were a Democrat, believe me, and you don't even have to believe me, we know this would be nonstop if there was a Democratic senator who disappeared and was in the hospital. And Dianne Feinstein, remember that? Because I do. People were, she had asked, she wanted to be replaced on one committee. And the answer is absolutely not. There was so much drama. And I am someone who believes in term limits. And I think when you get to a certain age, we just need to, this is no good. This is absolute madness. We can't have people who are having strokes and just unable to do the job anymore. This is not, this is not it. We absolutely need to have term limits. And so I was someone who thought she should have stepped down. But in a reverse situation, this would be a nonstop talking point, and they would be demanding proof of life. So today we get a picture of, Mitch McConnell a couple hours ago, um, like sitting up in a bed next to his wife who is now back. It's just all really, it's just all very strange and odd. And in the meantime, the constant lying, I am sure you all remember. I was also writing about Lorenzo Salgado. I want to say this right. Araujo, who was killed by ICE on his way to work. And if you remember Renee Good, and I'm sure you do, Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy, it's another situation where you have an unarmed civilian just killed, murdered by ICE. And his death has been ruled a homicide by the coroner. And this happened, it was the Houston coroners, the medical examiner has ruled this a homicide. He has been in the country for, I think, 30 years. He's owns his own construction company. He has 3 sons who were born here in the United States, U.S. citizens. He and his wife have been together for 35 years. They met as teenagers. He is undocumented. He was going through the steps. One of his sons had filed the paperwork, and they were doing that together. He had been going to his meetings. He's basically, he's been paying his taxes. He's been doing all the things for years here, and he wanted to do all the things that he needed to do to get citizenship, and he was going to all of his appointments and doing everything. He was not the target of this situation. They chased him, ICE, because they were looking for 2 white vans, and it's racial profiling. They said he looked like the person we were looking for, and they chased him, and they're chasing him in unmarked cars. And his sons, one of his sons, it's the most heartbreaking. His poor son was saying he found out his dad had died in a Facebook video. He couldn't reach him by phone, and he was starting to get really anxious because they're a very close-knit family, and they speak every day. His mother packs lunch for his dad every day. His dad goes around and picks up, the people who work on the different sites. So he was going to pick up people, and his son couldn't reach him. And he just had a terrible feeling. He just could not reach his dad. And then he saw a video on Facebook, and he heard his father's voice, and that as he was dying. And that is how he found out. And this poor son is just, they're devastated. And he did nothing wrong. But these ICE agents, they're in unmarked cars. And he said, we're going through this process together. Like, if he had known that it was ICE, he would have pulled over. The thing that his dad has been scared of forever is having his tools stolen. His tools are his livelihood. It's how he takes care of his family. And there's some crime in Texas, and it happens where people are, vans, like you'll have people, I guess, like, you'll get pulled over, and the it isn't the DA. That I was watching an interview with someone who is a high level, in Houston. Somebody was just saying that this is a thing that's been happening, where like gangs, like sometimes you'll get pulled over and robbed. And so his son was saying, I think my dad didn't pull over because there's no sirens, there's nothing on these cars that would indicate that this is ICE or a government agency or anything. And so he was just suddenly being followed by these cars, and they killed him. They shot him. And now the other people, the other three men who were in the car with him, who were also not the target of this ICE raid that was going on, they're trying to make these guys self-deport because they're witnesses. And none of these ICE agents were wearing body cams, which they are absolutely supposed to do. And they had the gall to say that they were not wearing body cams because of a disruption in funding because of the Dems. Now, I think you all know this, but DHS is the one government agency that has been overfunded through this entire nightmare of this second term. DHS has been, I mean, they have so much money. The way it works is they've got in their annual, budget, they have $9 to $11 billion that's appropriated just in the annual budget, but then they have all these other billions of dollars that have been approved that are already sitting there. So just for the fiscal year of 2026, they have this 9 to 11 billion, but they have multi-year funding allocations. And so when you add that in, they have 29 to 38 billion dollars to spend per year. And just in June, just like, a month ago, Congress just approved an additional $70 billion immigration package for ICE and Border Patrol through reconciliation. And a portion of that is going to be spent on the continuing mass deportation efforts, which is, really long-term detention, which is for-profit free labor camps. That's what we have going on here. And the acquisition of more of these large-scale, what they call regional processing centers, and they're inhumane detention forced labor camps. And that's what you like Dilley, right? Like that's what you see again and again is these people are being held for outrageous, like long periods of time. They're not getting processed quickly and sent, what is happening here is so. When history looks back on this period, it is going to be brutal. It is going to be so painful. But to have the gall to say that they were not wearing body cams because of the Dems, they had a disruption in funding is like, I can't describe the level of audacity, but it's off the charts, and wildly untrue. And that's what I mean by all the lying and the gaslighting. And if you remember, like Kristi Noem, when the Renee Good murder happened, and her first thing that she said was that, these ICE agents got snowed in. And these angry rioters, this mob of angry rioters surrounded them. And Renee Good was part of this angry mob of rioters, and she was ramming her car into this group of trapped ICE agents. And so one of them shot her in self-defense. That's what was initially reported to us. And then, of course, you see the actual footage. There's no snow on the ground. No one is trapped. It's one dude who decided he got himself, he's angry, and we know his name. And, he's circling her vehicle and really furious. And she is scared and trying to be calm. I mean, we don't have to go over this, but she backed up and turned her wheels all the way away. And his feet, you can see, are to the side. And he shot her and then called her a fucking bitch when he was done. So, the gaslighting and the lying, it gets exhausting. And so you get to a point where how can you trust any of these people? You cannot. You absolutely cannot. And that brought me to the story that, of all the stories that happened or that are currently in the news, I think the one that has been weighing the most heavily on my heart is Nolan Xavier Wells. And I am sure that you have heard about that as well. But, he went out on July 4th on a boat. He's Black. He went out with his 3 white friends on a boat. This is to Horn Island in Mississippi, and this is the Gulf Coast island. Horn Island. It's one of the Gulf Coast islands, and it's about 6 miles off the coast. He lives in a town called, I think it's Ocean Springs, and so the only way to get to Horn Island is on a boat. And there's no cell service there. It's a national park. People camp there. And it's a place, I guess, on July 4th where teenagers will go. So you can either if you have a boat, if you have a friend who has a boat, they'll go out to Horn Island and they'll dock and they'll, throw their anchors down. Then they'll like swim to the island and they'll hang out on the island and like hang out in groups and talk and whatever, and there were like a lot of kids there if you saw these videos. So he goes out with his 3, what is at first described as his 3 really close friends. That's when it's first, we're hearing about this story. They go out and some way or another, his 3 friends come back and he does not. So as the story is, kind of coming out, it's like his friends come back and, his mom is watching. She's got Life 360, which is an app. So you can kind of, you can track and see where your kid's cell phone is. And she's seeing his cell phone is back, but he hasn't checked in with her. And, that's not like him. And so she's like, checking, texting, calling, not hearing back. So she then texts one of her, I don't know if it's her close friend that she calls her sister, or I think it's one of her close friends that she's like a sister. That is what it is. And this woman's 2 boys, it's like Nolan's really, really close friends that he grew up with. And she says, have you seen Nolan? Is he with you? I don't know what's going on. I can see like his phone, is back on land, but I can't reach him. Have they seen him? So she says to her boys, have you guys seen Nolan? Do you know where Nolan is? And they say, no, we saw him on the island. And they open up Snapchat, because if you have teenagers like I do, okay, I have a 19-year-old son and a 17-year-old, she's about to be 17 in a couple of days, a 17-year-old daughter. And these kids Snapchat, like they use it in this way that I don't even understand, but they can see each other's locations. They're close friends. They can see on the map. They can see where they are if they want to. If they want to turn their locations on, they can share their locations with their friends at all times. So they open it up, and what they're seeing on their Snapchats is really different than what Nolan's mom is seeing on Life 360. She's seeing his phone where it's been the whole day, and now it's back on land. And what they're seeing on their Snapchat map is different. And so they decide her friend says, I'll go get the phone. I can see where the phone is. I think it's at this person's house. And some way or another, what ends up happening is then I watched there was press conference, and then Nolan's parents were on Good Morning America. And basically, what they describe is they end up at one of the boys' homes that Nolan went out on the boat with. And I believe it is Warren's house, where they can see the phone on Life 360 and I believe on Snapchat. I'm not sure about that. So that's where they go. They go to the home, they can see Nolan's phone, and they knock on the door. And the dad says, I'm Nolan's dad. We're here for his phone. We can see his phone is here. Do you know where he is? And I think Warren had called them, actually, too. I think at some point, Nolan had called, I'm sorry, not Nolan's. I'm so sorry. Warren had called Nolan's mom and said, I wanted to tell you, Nolan stayed on the island. He was talking to a girl. And so, we came back. He's coming back with someone else. I think that had happened at some point there. So, but he did not say he had the phone. And they had to track the phone in order to find it. I think it is Warren who called them, but I'm not sure. There's a lot of murky, strange details, but I do know that they tracked the phone. Nobody brought them the phone. And when they got there, the dad said, and so this kid said to him, okay, well, I don't know where his phone is, but I'll go look, and closed the door and left his parents outside. That is not a good friend. There's so many problems. And he was inside for 5 minutes. And then he came out and said, I can't find it. I don't know where it is. And there were other people, other kids in the house, a little bit of chaos. And his dad said, look, can you please look again? And there was a girl there as well, teenager. And she's like, I'll look too. And she came back after a few minutes, and and also Nolan's car is parked there. He had spent the night there the night before, so his car is parked there. So she comes back and she gives them Nolan's phone and his keys. But this is not what close friends do. Close friends, First of all, let's back up for a second, okay? Because I do have teenagers. So if my son goes out on a boat on July 4th to an island with no cell service, and he gets off this boat, he's got his 3 buddies with him, right? And he gets off the boat and he's on the island and he's talking, and now a few hours go by and his buddies are going to leave. There's no way that he's staying on this island where there's nothing. It's not like there's restaurants. There's nothing. This is a place where you camp or that's it. He is not staying behind. There is no possibility of that, because he's talking to a girl. Either his buddies are going to be like, dude, let's go. We're leaving. You can get her number when we get back to the mainland. Or she can write her number on your hand or whatever. We're going. Or if it's okay, well, I'm going to go back on her boat. Then it's okay, where is her boat? And let me get the number of the person whose boat you're going to take, if that's what you're doing, and then let me give you your phone so that when you have a signal again, you can text me and let me know you're back on land. There's a whole bunch of things that would happen, because if that's the situation that you're in, where you're in a place where there isn't any cell service, you don't leave your buddy in his bathing suit and nothing else, no shoes, no shirt, no phone, and get on your boat and leave. That's not a friend. And nobody would do that. These are not, these are 18 and 19-year-old kids, and I have a 19-year-old. I know what I'm talking about. I have a 17-year-old. Neither one of my kids and their friends would ever do that. So right away, this story just doesn't, as a mom, everything in my gut is no, this is really weird. And if my son's friends were saying this to me, I would be like, wait a second. I'm sorry. Wait. You left him on the island? I don't understand what you're telling me. You have his phone and you left him on the island. Who is he going to come back with? And if the answer is, I don't know, I'd be like, okay, get your mom right now. Like right now, we're going on your boat back to the island right now. Like that's what would be happening. No one offered their boat to his parents. None of these really good friends said, let's get our boat right now. Let's go back to the island. This is not okay. I can't believe our kids left Nolan. That's not okay. No one did that. Not till the next day did the coach, the coach then found out like Nolan was missing. The coach got Nolan's dad and they went and were searching for him all day long. So this story it stinks. It's, for people who are saying, let them, figure out what happened. It takes time to figure these things out. Sure, of course it does. Of course it takes time to figure things out. But the reason that people are talking about this and upset about it is because there are a whole bunch of things right off the bat that do not make sense and are not okay. And if you did flip this and this whole thing about don't make it about race, of course, yes, you can't not make it about that, because if this were flipped and it were 3 black teenagers and 1 white teenager, and the 1 white teenager didn't make it back, we'd be in a whole different set of circumstances. Those boys, that's the other thing that happened, is they instantly they deleted their social media and they lawyered up. All of them. All the boys that were on the boat with him, social media gone, and they all lawyered up. And one of the mothers is a judge, and it's a mess. So, when you start saying, don't make it, this is Mississippi. This is like Emmett Till territory. And there have been more lynchings. People, there have been boys found hanging and girls from trees on college campuses. There's a lot of stuff going on here. You cannot take that out of the equation. And beyond that, I'm going to say something else. I live in a very liberal city on the West Coast, often called the left coast, right? I'm in California, and like we are hated. We're hated by like Fox News. The president calls the governor Gavin Newscum like a child, withholds FEMA money, even though we pay way more than we take. I mean, it's like, it's whatever. And even here in a very liberal city, it is a different world for my white children than it is for their black friends. And from the time my children were old enough to go out in the world without me, I have been having those conversations with them. Even before they were going out in the world without me, I was explaining these things to them, because my kids can go out, and they could do this when they were 12, 13, 14. Like if they would go for a walk in the neighborhood and they were silly and loud and dancing around, or being, they'd be with a group of friends or something, and if they got rowdy and kind of forgot themselves, as like a group of kids will do sometimes, nothing really is going to happen to them. The worst that could happen, let's say my kids, let's say they're like 13, 14, and there's like 6 of them, 7 of them, and they're like walking down a residential street, and they sit down and they're like being loud and they're laughing, and one of them stands up and he's dancing, whatever, and they're just not really thinking about how loud they're being. And in case you haven't been around like 13-year-olds or 14-year-olds recently, it is like, I don't understand what happens, but there's some kind of physics barrier, sound barrier that breaks, and they're like, there may as well be 30 of them. So let's just say they're not paying attention and it gets really loud and some neighbor gets annoyed. They're in the house nearby and they're like, what is that? Probably the worst thing that's going to happen is that neighbor may open up their door or stick their head out the window and be like, hey, you're being really loud. Like, be quiet, get out of it, keep moving. That's probably the worst that's going to happen. And then they're, oh, sorry. And they'll like keep moving. If the neighbor is really like a jerk, maybe they're going to call the cops. Maybe. Okay. If they call the cops and say there's a group of kids outside and they're being so loud, they're sitting there and they've been there for like half an hour, the cop's going to ask questions. Is most likely what's going to happen. And the questions are going to be like, do they seem drunk? Do they seem like they're, like on drugs? And depends, the person's going to say yes or no, whatever. Cop might say to them, do they look like they live in the neighborhood? That's code for what's their race? How are they dressed? If this person says, they're dressed all right, maybe they live in the neighborhood, I don't know. Cop's probably going to be like, you know what? You could just tell them to like move along. If they stay a lot longer, we'll come on out. Or the cop might be like, all right, we'll drive by. We'll drive by. We'll tell them to keep moving. If the cops did come by, the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say to my kids, hey, you guys are being really loud. We got a call. You got to like move it along. Like just move it along. And they might even make a joke. The person in this house over here is cranky, wink, wink, old and cranky. Move it along, kids. Like go to the park or go to the beach. That's the worst that's going to happen. If that group of kids is black, whole different ballgame. Whole different ballgame. Black kids, and we all know this, okay, cannot be loud, rowdy, silly on the streets. There is no guarantee that if a black child is loud and rowdy on the street, that they are making it home for dinner. And that is a huge, completely outrageous reality. And if you do not tell your white children that that's the reality, then you are making their black friends less safe in the world. Because if they go out in the world together and your white children get rowdy and some just angry person calls the cops, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. And not only that, you are raising white kids who have no sense of their own privilege and are not going to be the kind of people who grow up looking out for their friends. They're not going to be the kind of people who grow up looking out for their friends, especially the ones who don't look like them. And I don't know about you, but we have enough people like that in the world. And whatever happened, I don't know what happened to Nolan. But I do know that the parents of these other boys that left their friend on that island, if that is what happened, which I really don't know, they did not teach their boys how you take care of your black friends. They did not do a good job. I know that. And I know that this story is not adding up. And I feel so sad for his family, for Nolan's family, the thought of, and I really hope people that have, 18-year-old children really think hard about what it would feel like. Your child goes out on a boat on the 4th of July and their 3 friends come home and your child does not come home. And that's it. That's it. You never, ever, see your child again or get to speak to them or hug them or anything. And you can't even find out what happened because people are not giving you straight answers. They're telling you a story that doesn't make any sense. It's just, that's not okay. It's really not okay. And you don't have to jump to conclusions to know that it's not okay. And we just need to do a better job of taking care of each other. We need to do a better job of thinking about how we would feel. So that, and, in general, jumping to conclusions usually gets you into trouble, but I think as far as, just to kind of go back to what I was saying at the beginning, when people show you who they are, there's also that, right? Believe them the first time. When someone shows you they're untrustworthy or they're racist or they're misogynistic, or they're a narcissistic, abusive a-hole, believe them the first time. Believe them the first time. You don't have to, you can trust that if that feels like a conclusion that feels, you don't need to go back and you don't need to spend a lot of time figuring out whether you're right. Just, you can trust that. Okay. I'm sending you a lot of love. I know these are they continue to be, just the most, I don't know, just the most, the most wild, painful times, but I have to hope, and I keep hoping that there's some level of, everything just kind of starting to break. It feels like that to me a bit, that things are, this just isn't working for so many people, and that maybe we will get to a place where we can just build something new from the ground up, that maybe people will finally, it'll just collapse in on itself, and people will realize that nothing good came from voting for this man and putting these people in power who are just, this is madness. It's madness every week. And who's who's doing well here? Who's having a good time with this? I would really like to know. It's the billionaire class. And maybe some millionaires are doing, I don't know, but I mean, they have to be multi millionaires or something to be doing well. I don't know who's enjoying this. And then not only do you have to be multi millionaire, but you also have to be racist and misogynistic to be thinking this is a good time. Or you have to be willing to overlook the rampant racism and misogyny because you're just caring about money, which is who wants to be that person? I have to think that we're coming rapidly to the end of this madness. I really hope. I love y'all. I hadn't done one of these podcasts, just me, for a while. And I went and looked at the download numbers and realized that you all seem to really download these the most. So I guess I should be doing these. So I will start doing these again, more. I thank you, and I really appreciate you a lot, a lot. And stay safe out there. And I'm here, and I'm sending you a lot of love till next time. Okay, bye for now.